Hello and welcome back to RageGamingVideos. My name is Solo and today we're talking Endgame Minion Necromancer. Minion Necromancer is a really cool and fun concept. It's obviously a major part of the whole concept of a Necromancer, and yet in Diablo 4 it's quite hard to make work. I put together a build for leveling in that way, what to do and what to take, and made it viable for your journey on the way to 50, which we have a video on the channel for. But what happens after that? In the end game, let's say 50 to 70 and above that, when you reach these stages of the game, you'll find enemies with extremely deadly abilities, raw high damage and tankiness as well. You need really powerful abilities, burst potential, CC, your own survivability. And the thing is, minion builds struggle with a lot of that, as does Necromancer as a whole when it comes to defensives. Fortunately, there is a way. This footage is me in a level 70 Torment dungeon, cleaning up packs through minion based gameplay. As you can see, I'm working my way around the fight, managing my minion power, debuffing the enemy for CDR, inflicting blight to specific enemies to make them weaker, popping a ton of corpses to spread shadow damage even more. And it's pretty tactical as a way to play, in which you manage multiple aspects of combat to make it all work at once. In single target, you can actually see how effective this can be as well, with potent CC potential, impressive DPS, and from relative safety while I watch from the back while my minions deal with the brunt of it. Compared to that, in say a tier 21 nightmare dungeon, so that's a torment dungeon where there's 4 negative affixes, the enemies are mega tanky and mega dangerous and very high level at that, level 75, it's functioning and pushing well. And this comes down to 3 main aspects of damage: my minions and their mega attack speed and CC they provide, shadow damage over time and area, meaning all that shadow blight on the ground, and finally the corpse explosion raw damage itself, which is a key component of how we burst. Through this build, we maintain Army of the Dead as much as we can with its newly buffed state, with more power and shorter cooldown, and while Army of the Dead is active, it greatly reduces the damage our minions take so they consistently survive to do more. So we can make minion builds work in the end game, and this isn't even a finished build, far from it. I'm level 71, and frankly this build and this playstyle, it needs so many Paragon points. So to be clear, this is an endgame build, meaning it's extremely dependent on aspects. It features 2 uniques I consider vital, and I'm even missing 1 more after that I desperately want. This build should be something to work towards if you don't have it right now as a long-term endgame project. It's not a leveling build, so please check out our Necromancer leveling builds if that's what you're after. With all of that said, let's start explaining things, starting with the talent tree and the abilities. From the top then, with the skill tree, we have Reap, which is a darkness ability which is very important. An actual useful auto attack in endgame is quite rare, so we're going to enhance that for the attack speed benefit, but we want Acolyte's Reap. This means every 5 seconds, every time we use this, we spawn a corpse at a guaranteed level, vital in opening any fight where there isn't a corpse available immediately. For our core skill, we are using Blight, another darkness skill, leveling it at 5 out of 5 to increase its damage. We enhance it for the slow, but more importantly, Paranormal Blight, in which it has a 30% chance to immobilize enemies. Also in this tier, of course, Hued Flesh, meaning every time we deal damage, we might spawn a corpse, double that against bosses. It's amazing. In our next tree then, of course, we've got Corpse Explosion, a vital component to how we deal damage. 5 out of 5 for that because it's a main DPS option. We're going to enhance it for the better radius, but more importantly, we go for Blighted Corpse Explosion. This turns it into that goopy shadow damage, dealing damage to those standing in it over 6 seconds. We're also going to pick up the Skeletal Warrior Mastery for 45% increased damage to our warriors and life. And we're going to pick 2 out of 3 Grim Harvest. As much as I'd like 3 out of 3, this build just needs so many points, we can barely even reach this. Then we have 3 out of 3 Fueled by Death for its incredible damage perk after we pop a corpse for 6 seconds. Moving down to the next tree, Decrepify, a vital ability, cursing enemies and giving us CDR potential because we've not only enhanced it for the potential of stun, but more importantly, with Abhorrent Decrepify, this is how we're getting the cooldown of Army of Dead back, so this is really important. Also in this tree, we're going to enhance our mages, much like the warriors, this time for 60% at 3 out of 3. Now we come down to a really important tree for this ability right here, Gloom. First, we must pick out 1 of 3 Reaper's Pursuit just to get through there. It's nice movement speed, but then we pick up Gloom. At 3 out of 3, when you damage enemies with darkness skills, which 3 of our main ones we've just gone through are, they take 6% times increased shadow damage from you and your minions, and it stacks. This passive means your shadow damage starts to skyrocket. Also, we snipe 1 level of Crippling Darkness because it means darkness skills have a chance to stun. Further potential CC, really important in the endgame. And as always, 3 out of 3 Necrotic Carapace, giving us Fortify, meaning we take less damage when fortified. This happens whenever a corpse is formed, which is constant constant in this build. Nearly there then, we're at the ultimate tree. Of course, we're picking up Army of Dead with its new improvements in this patch, and then we're enhancing it to its full to supreme level, meaning it just raises a bunch of warriors and skeletal mages, as well as the suicide bombers. As always with any minion build, these 4 skills are absolutely vital. They basically enhance your minions in different ways, increasing their damage, improving their survivability, preventing them from being one-shot. It's all absolutely incredible, so we full commit to all of those. And our last point, of course, is Shadow Blight. Shadow damage, as we've been talking about, is really important as part of this build. This takes our shadow damage and makes enemies be infected by Shadow Blight. Both you and your minions will deal 10% times bonus damage with Shadow Blight. Then every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or the minions that are affected by the Shadow Blight, they just take another burst of shadow damage. Now the minion part. Yes, we have sacrificed our golem. No matter what I do with this build, it needs more. It's like I need a 7th ability slot. I need about 100 more Paragon points, and I just can't have it all. I have to pick and choose and ultimately sacrifice something somewhere on all sides. So let's start with the Skeletal Warriors in Reaper. This is because they have great AoE potential, but most importantly, upgrade 2 means they have a 15% chance to carve flesh of enemies forming a corpse. This means we always have corpses available to buff up our minions and pop tons of corpse explosions, key to our DPS. Skeletal Mages, we have Cold in upgrade 2. Enemies who are frozen or damaged while frozen by Cold Mage's primary attack, they're made vulnerable, meaning they take much more damage. We'll talk later when we talk about the armor section to do with how important Cold Mages are and their freeze ability. Lastly, for golems, this is just an awkward one. We can't fit the golem, so we have to sacrifice. The attack speed's not that important to us. 10% extra health doesn't feel that great, but sure. And then 30% times increased critical strike damage is great for the Bone Spear build, but we ourselves aren't really going to benefit from that nearly as much. So since we don't have much survivability, 10% extra health is nice. Time for the Paragon board then. This is a big one because, again, there's so much I want and we can't have it all. So I'm taking various losses in the path that I take to achieve maximum power as soon as possible. I'm level 71, I've got all the Lilith statues for the 4 Paragon points from that, and I've only got 1 maxed out Renown, meaning I get 4 Paragon points from that. So that's how I push as many Paragon points as I have right now. Starting with the standard board then, we move up and to the right and around to the left, picking up the Glyph Socket. In this, we have Territorial. This is because it provides 10% damage reduction against close enemies when activated. Necromancer desperately needs survivability, and I've just found across the board Territorial to be a great consistent way to reduce damage. If an enemy's ranged, we can move near it and get it to be a close enemy. This is just amazing passive mitigation. Then, as you can see, as we keep enhancing it, it increases our damage to close enemies as well, and as we move around the fight at close range, that's exactly where we want to be. Through that then, we need to activate it by picking up enough dexterity. There's a quick zoom to show you exactly what I picked up. As you can see though, it's not fully upgraded. It's about level 7 or 8. At 15, I will upgrade this and pick up more rare nodes around the outside and enhance this by picking up more dexterity. Either way, we pick up both the yellow nodes here and move up to the left side and come up to our next board, where I have picked up the Wither board. This legendary node is potentially awesome, right? Shadow damage over time, percent times increases. There's a lot of potential there, but the problem is it costs too much to get it. I would have to give up this entire board to actually make it over there, and it's not worth it. Long term, we'll talk about Wither, but right now at level 71, I just can't fit it in without taking too much of a loss. So instead, we work our way up to the first rare node here just to pick it up since it's right there, and then come over to the glyph. Here we pick up Scourge. This is for our minions. You and your minions deal 10% times increased damage to enemies affected by shadow damage over time effects, so Shadow Blight, and all the shadow options we have in the build. So this is a big damage increase for both you and your minions. We'll need to activate it by picking up 25 willpower, so here's a quick zoom on what I've picked up to min-max pick that up, while also, yes, picking up the rare node in the bottom left for its 20% shadow damage increase. I also work my way up and to the right here to pick up another 24% shadow resistance and intelligence with the gloom node, but min-maxing my way to 25 willpower and then working my way up and to the right into the next board. Again, ignoring another really good node because I can't afford to get it right now, and moving to our new board on the right, which is the Flesh Eater board. This legendary node means we can increase our damage, just all damage, by 40%, and it's times as well. This is insane. So I rotate the board to allow myself to reach that node as fast as possible. I work my way up and around, picking up the rare node Stifle here, which, as you can see, I can't even secondary activate yet. Come back down to the legendary node to pick it up, and then going above to the top and working my way down, picking up the rare node targeted on the way and activating the glyph where we have Mage. This one immediately powers up my skeletal mages, and its secondary bonus, giving them resistance to all elements, as nice as that is nowhere near as important. So considering I'm barely able to activate this node and get the socket in time, it's a great way to min-max increase some damage to my skeletal mages, which I will enhance further. The next step for me, with a lot of my Paragon points, is to fill this out and get the secondary effect going, and pick up the rare nodes that I had to miss earlier, which are awesome, and also magic nodes that I was ignoring as well, pretty much when I have the points to do this. I will fix my 3 boards before progressing to a 4th board, but to let you know what glyph I'll be looking at with board 4, it's going to be Dead Razor for more minion enhancement. Now let's talk about equipment, because this is important. Firstly, I recommend you use a one-hand weapon and an offhand, because this gives you more slots to work with for aspects. For example, on my shield here, I have skeletal mages increased by 2. You could have this on your gloves, on your boots, on your chest, but because we need so many aspects, it's got to go somewhere. For my helmet, we have the damage reduction perk aspect, very good for our base survivability. In the chest, I've got the cold skeletal mages cast a blizzard for X amount of damage and continuously chill enemies for 8% over 6 seconds. Basically, this gives my mages a super move, dealing AoE cold damage, slowing enemies who, if continuously hit by them, will freeze and be hard stunned, at which point, as we talked about earlier, they'll be very vulnerable and take much more damage. For the gloves, our first unique, Howl from Below. Instead of detonating immediately, our corpse explosions summon a volatile skeleton that just charges at an enemy and explodes. Basically, it means I pop a body and then the skeleton runs towards an enemy and hits them. And what's amazing about this is it means my corpse explosions don't miss in combat, because the skeleton runs and hits it into them. For the legs, we have the all-important I'm not willing to give it up aspect, basically increasing our armor for 4 seconds when we deal any damage, and it stacks up. This is a clutch way to spike armor and keep yourself alive. When it comes to the boots then, this is where I've got my increased number of skeletal warriors by 2. We need this one, and also the one that increases the mages by 2. On the weapon, we have the raw damage increase. Reanimation aspect increases our skeleton damage while alive for 10 seconds by 30% times as well. That's a big increase. So as long as they live for 10 seconds or more, they're stronger. Next is the amulet, where I very specifically have the Frenzied Dead aspect to increase its power. Basically, our minions damage an enemy, they gain a % of attack speed, and that stacks up and up and up. So by attacking consistently, they attack faster. The next unique though is the Ring of Melndeln. This is a big one. When we have 7 or more minions alive, we have up to a 10% chance to empower all minions, causing the next attack from each to explode with physical damage. So randomly, your minions suddenly blast AoE. This is insane. I think this is the most required unique for a minion build that exists. Lastly, we have our other ring, which has Unyielding Commanders aspect on it. While Army of the Dead is active, your minions gain up to 100% attack speed increase and take 90% reduced damage. So while our Army of the Dead is active, our minions do not die. If your minions aren't dying, they're staying alive longer, providing their DPS, being stronger themselves by attacking consistently, and the many perks of that. This keeps your minions alive, and also Army of the Dead hits pretty hard now. It's feeling great, and we can get the CDR really low thanks to Decrepify. This aspect is another one that I think is required for a minion build. The last thing I'm missing is the unique weapon though, which we should talk about. The weapon I'm missing is this, Black River, which is a one-handed scythe. This unique causes corpse explosions to consume up to 4 additional corpses after the initial explosion, dealing a % increased damage with a % larger radius per corpse, meaning it turns your corpse explosions into a nuke, and you have to spam it less because it consumes the ones and still gives you the resources anyway. This is going to really increase the DPS, and I'm very sad I don't have it yet. And a quick word on gemming. I'm using Thorns in Armor coming from the Emeralds. This reflects damage to those that attack us, because you can get skills on your armor like this one. Skeletal mages inherit some of your thorns, so they reflect the damage when hit as well. The higher your thorns, the more damage that will do. So there's potential in a minion build with thorns, which isn't this one, but one we might think about in the future. For weapons, we want to increase our damage to vulnerable enemies, so again, Emeralds. And in the jewelry, we have the skulls to improve our armor rating. And now finally, a quick showcase on how you want to play this. To begin a fight, you want to apply Decrepify to as many enemies as possible. Those struck by this and DPS'd and killed will help you reduce the cooldown of Army of the Dead. At which point you pop Army of the Dead to get Decrepify to reduce its cooldown. The first corpse should be used on buffing up your allies, and that's shown by this green bar ticking down. And you want to maintain that green buff throughout all the fight as best you can. It heals your allies and makes them deal more damage. Then we use a mix of blight shots on specific targets to make them take more damage, so that's the elites or the big bads. And absolutely spam out corpse explosion, spreading the blight in as many places as you can while applying blight from the essence you recover by using corpse explosion. So simply, we walk into the fight, we Decrepify, we Army of the Dead, buff up our allies, and then start blighting specific targets and corpse exploding constantly while maintaining our buff on our allies and keeping all the enemies Decrepified so we can use Army of the Dead as soon as it's back. And it really is that simple. We can use our basic attack Reap to spawn more corpses whenever we're starved of them, but to be honest, thanks to our Reapers, they're spawning a ton of them as well, and all the spread damage should be proccing hewed flesh anyway as well, so there should be corpses all the time everywhere to use. This means you never run out of essence, and that gameplay loop should be straightforward. But there you have it. That is my endgame minion build in its current form. It's able to handle what I'm working on right now at level 71. I hope my explanations help you kind of form your own version of this. The minion build is feeling a lot better, and this version is a lot stronger. However, I still think the Bone Spear build is like the optimal DPS build for a Necromancer, especially when we get into the true endgame with a lot of Paragon points, a lot of Paragon boards, and those really powerful uniques that you can get. I will be back to cover that build and how crazy that can be with a video guide on the channel soon. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.